I would like to invite Risky Business to the stage. I feel like I'm in The Sound of Music calling the Von Trapps, and they've left. Risky Business. Okay. Welcome to everyone coming in. If I can just remind everyone to turn off their phones. Thank you. So we'll invite Risky Business to the stage and give them about 1 minute to set up. Then they will have 15 minutes for their presentation. And then, again, we'll go to the judges after that for another 8 minutes of Q&A and feedback. So Risky Business.
All right. Hi, everyone. We're here to talk to you about affecting change with sustainable diapers in Venezuela. My name is Simran.
I'm Jack.
I'm Kyle.
My name is Curtis.
And we're Risky Business, here to help your business enter risky markets. So you might be asking, what's the opportunity of entering risky markets? Well, let me tell you. There is zero saturation in this market. There's a high demand for these diapers. And there's established product distribution channels, which helps us with ease of entering this market. And lastly, there's an ethical business opportunity with potential returns along with the high risk. So a general market overview. So here I'm going to tell you the key factors that we've included in our business model. So first, there's 35% tariff on goods, which we've included into our expenses. Along with that, there has been a 70% GDP drop from 2012 to 2018. Along with that, in Venezuela, children use 126 diapers per child per year, which is an extremely low rate. And along with that, there's a 21% child mortality rate. The country suffers from an E-level risk, and the country has decided that they are not accepting humanitarian aid.
So given these problems and opportunities, we wanted to come up with a business plan and strategy that would help facilitate these goals. So we decided on a triple bottom line framework. Essentially, this moves our focus beyond just profits into a 3-tiered system of people, planet, and profits, hence the triple bottom line. In terms of each section, we have a goal. In terms of people, this is the social aspect. We want to increase diaper usage by double by the year 2025, up to 256 diapers per capita. We also, in turn, want to reduce infant mortality along with this. In terms of the environment, we want to increase sustainability, awareness, and availability within the country. And in terms of profit, we want to have a market share of 16% by the year 2025. To help facilitate this, the entity structure we recommend is a benefit corporation. Legally, this is the same as a C corporation. So the flow of capital between partners is the same. It doesn't change anything about the structure, but rather it helps initiate development for the corporate legal structure insofar as you don't have to focus only on profits, but rather on people and the social and service aspects. So this is not like a nonprofit in the sense that there's tax exempt write-offs or anything, but rather it's just decided by the shareholders that we're being a benefit corporation so that we don't only focus on profits. Beyond this, given our framework, we looked at critical supplier criteria to help meet a supplier that would cater to this demand. And so we looked first at sustainability to meet our planet goal. We looked next at a firm with a small market cap and net operating income. This is because these large conglomerates, frankly, they're too big to come into these markets. And so we're looking at low margins, so we need someone who's opportunistic and willing to take on risk, and then willingness to expand. And so we came to our supplier.
The brand placement we suggest is sustainability at the start. And because of this, the supplier we suggest is Eco-by-Nady, which is a Swedish-based company. First thing to know is that all of their products are 100% biodegradable, and this ties into the issue of potentially increasing waste due to disposable diapers. Another thing to know is that the company is very business-to-business and new market friendly, and that they're very willing to work with new partners, and they are very interested in opening into new markets as well. Another thing to know is that they have synergistic corporate values and that their desire to create good products with a sustainable mindset also ties in with the company's worry about sustainability as well. Finally, they are the market-leading diaper company in the eco-development friendly segment. In terms of logistics and shipping, because the production of the diapers are in China, the shipment will take place over ship freight from China directly to Venezuela. Also, we can put about 34,560 diapers in one TEU container, and each container costs about $500 overall. Shipment from China directly to Venezuela will take about 50 to 60 days, plus 7 days for onloading and offloading. In terms of our distribution suppliers within Venezuela, we suggest going through our traditional methods, which is supermarkets, pharmacies, convenience stores, and detales, which are small informal stores which are commonly found in Venezuela. Also, in terms of our institutional distributors, we suggest going with private hospitals and medical clinics. And in terms of NGO donations, we suggest partnering with the organization Giving the Children Hope, in which 1% of total diapers will go towards them in year one at equivalent about 50,000 diapers.
So our goal is not only to maximize profits, but also to create social change. How can we do this? So with partnering with Eco by Natty, we've decided to start an awareness campaign. The country suffers from a shortage of diapers, and along with that, many government and military officials take these diapers from these stores, buy them in bulk, and sell them at unaffordable rates on the black market. Because of this, we wanted to put this image along with this phrase on our branding on the products with our place in the stores, saying Dejanos vivir, which means let us live. It is talking directly to those people, saying that understand and feel the empathy for the child mortality, and along with that, create solidarity for those who have felt the same loss. With this, we also want to deter people from price gouging on the black market. This is similar to the same concept that was done in Europe with the Smoking Kills campaign. It was placed on cigarettes to deter people from buying this due to health reasons, and we'd like the same impact. With this awareness campaign, we have a 5-year goal of doubling our diaper usage.
So now that we've outlined the problem, a supplier, and the framework, we want to take a look at the current market and what we want to attain within our implementation plan. So the current market in a developed country for diapers averages around 2,500 diapers per capita. You can see Venezuela's current supply is far below this at only 126 diapers per capita. Naturally, there's a huge gap here that we want to fulfill. Our target demand is obviously not going to meet that of a developed country within 5 years or even 10 years. And so our goal is therefore to double demand to our supply to 252 diapers per capita. This would lead the total demand in the market to 756 million diapers consumed per year. Of that, we want to obtain a 16% market share, which would get us to 126 million per year.
So to do a project like this, you obviously need a lot of capital. We decided the best way to approach this was a debt-to-equity ratio of 30 to 70. The 30% would come from Goldman Sachs in a bank loan. They have a strong history of FDI in emerging markets and high-risk investments, so they would be perfect. And then 30% would be a MaxiaNet equity fund. 20% would come from the private foundation of the Gates Foundation, 10% from private foundation of the Save the Children Foundation, and then the additional 10% would come from 2 different government organizations that encourage FDI in emerging markets and corporate responsibility.
So the 2 foundations we mentioned, we suggest partnering with is Save the Children as well as the Gates Foundation. MaxiaNet will benefit by gaining the funding necessary for this development, but these 2 foundations will also benefit in that their money will go towards projects that align with their values. For Save the Children, their money will go towards projects that will reduce child mortality rate and increase child health. And for the Gates Foundation, the money will go towards projects that will increase the overall operations and development in new countries. In terms of government grants, we also suggest getting funding from the Grand Challenges as well as USAID. The Grand Challenges is a research initiative started by the Gates Foundation that aims for improving overall global health. In terms of USAID, money will also go towards projects that aligns with them in terms of opportunities in new emerging markets.
So now I'm going to talk about a little bit about the important financing numbers. We ran a sensitivity analysis on the net present value and came out with an average of about $11.3 million. The weighted average cost of capital is about 13.76%. This comes from the 24% that Goldman Sachs would charge on their debt and the 20% that's the market risk in Venezuela. The total margin that we came with is about 8%, which is close to the industry average of 7 to 9%. Like I said before, the debt to equity ratio is at 30 to 70 because we want to keep the lower debt because the interest rates are so high. And then payback period of fixed cost is 10.87 years. This is a little longer because a lot of the money comes from grants and different foundations. So it takes a little longer, but it does pay back in a short period of time for investment this large. Of the $10 million we raised, we determined the different expenses that would come from. 35% would come from tariffs. This is a major component, and Venezuela has very high tariffs on produced goods, so that's where 35% comes from. 29% is transportation, getting the goods from China to Venezuela on the shipping containers. 15% is soft costs inside Venezuela. When you're expanding into a new market, you need administration and overhead in the country. 10% is soft costs outside of Venezuela. This is the contracts with the new supplier and increased administration to go into the new market. And then the smaller percentages you see here are for distribution channel development, the give back program, marketing in Venezuela, and a very small amount for foreign exchange arbitrage.
So now that we have an understanding of these key financial metrics, we want to take a look at the profit distribution on the sale of one diaper. 50% of that is going to go back to our supplier, Eco by Nady. 20% will then come to MaxiNet, and the remaining 30% will go to the respective retailers within Venezuela. Now that we're talking about margins, we want to go back to what Kyle mentioned, that there's an 8% margin on each diaper sold. With a price of 30 US cents per diaper, we make a profit of 2 cents, so that's where the 8% comes from. So we're operating very thin margins, and where this comes from is our pricing strategy, which is the penetration strategy. Effectively, what we're doing is flooding the market with large quantities, large volumes of supply, and charging very low prices so that these margins can be achieved. And effectively, we're entering ourselves into that market in a way that puts us as a market leader. In order to hedge against inflation, we're looking at a mixed currency model. Since the US dollar is accepted as tender currency within Venezuela, we're accepting both VEF and USD. In essence, this is going to allow us not only to get out of the market better by having direct access to US dollars, but helps cater to both rich clientele who may have access to dollars and the poor who only have access to the Venezuelan bolivar. Last, we have a hyperinflation hedging system, which Kyle will now talk about.
So with the VEF that we have left in Venezuela, we decided to make a hedge against the high inflation. 40% of our VEF will be allocated to commodities, especially agriculture, and their main one is corn, so mainly corn. 20% we'd exchange immediately on the spot exchange rate. 20% of this would be, or an additional 20% would be on the 90-day Forex forward rate contracts. This is because a bad day in the spot exchange rate or something like that, this adds a little diversity to our exchanges. 10% would be on a gold 90-day forward contract. This is because in emerging markets, historically, gold trades more like stably on 90-day and 120-day forward contracts. And then 10% is a crude oil direct investment. This is because we need, oil is such an important part of Venezuela that we need to be involved in it a little bit, and it's a great way to diversify yourself.
So before we enter Venezuela, we have a pre-implementation schedule as to how to set things in order before we export into Venezuela. We begin by establishing funding from our charitable and government grants organizations. After this, we create a business strategy with Eco by Nady, which includes our awareness campaign to affect social change. After this, we coordinate strategical production amounts and costs to arrange for how much products we want on the shelves. After this, we leverage Venezuelan distribution networks to move products, which is our shipping from China to Venezuela. And lastly, we export in Venezuela. So once we export in Venezuela, we have an implementation schedule as to how to break things up. Because with babies, there's baby steps. And so we've decided that in year one, we'd like to distribute 40% and gradually increase with 50% in year two, 60% in year three, 80% in year four, and at full product volume at 100% in year 5, 2025. This is because we want to move at a gradual rate because as we first enter, we expect that there will be an increase in competition as we move forward. In year 5, we plan to be distributing 756 million diapers in that year and onwards. So now I'm going to walk you through our entire journey to Venezuela with Eco by Nady. We began by identifying identifying a supplier that encompasses our triple bottom goal. After this, we use supply chain and distribution channels through Venezuela to figure out shipping routes and shipping costs. After this, we decided our awareness campaign, which was to affect social change and create empathy amongst those who price gouge these products. Our fourth step was financing and charitable funding from these organizations, along with deciding our expenses and profit distribution. And lastly, we are exporting to Venezuela with an implementation plan of gradual increase and reaching 756 million diapers per year. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and we're now open to any questions.
Judges will have 8 minutes to have Q&A and feedback.
Thank you. You just talked about your implementation, and you talked about leveraging as far as your initial distribution, first year 40%, then second year 50%. Based on that, to year 2025, to gain the market share that you said you gain at 16%, was all those years at a gross margin of 8%, or?
Yeah, they would all be at a gross margin of 8% because you're already reaching economies of scale, sending 40% of our total amount of production.
And then on your distribution network, as far as what you take into account in your distribution network as your strategy on retail and hospital and clinics, 50-50, or how was that broken up as far as the strategy on the distribution side?
I think we would primarily go into the retail industry with additional into the hospital and clinics, but primarily around 60% in the retail industry because that's how we're going to reach the lower income families better than in the expensive private hospitals. And
it's a Swedish product, but the country of origin is China.
The
Manufacturers in China?
They only manufacture in China, but it's a Swedish product that's all over Europe and also sold in the United States.
And that's the import duties are 35% to
yes.
China into Venezuela.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a little confused in the last 2-3 slides, and I'm visual, so I think it was like the one before this. One more? Go back one more. So here we've got the pre-implementation schedule, and we go from establishing funding from government and charitable foundations to creating the business strategy with Eco by Nady. And if you go forward towards the end, 2 slides, to me it seems like it's inverse. So we go from working with Nady and then going in step number 4 to the financing. So what would your first step be?
So this last slide was more just walking you through our thought process of how we got to this stage. The pre-implementation schedule is the plan that we would use before we actual entering of Venezuela.
And then my second question and final question for you, because I'll pass the baton, is what would you say is MaxiNet's single biggest challenge in making this work?
I think the biggest challenge is hyperinflation in Venezuela because most of the products that we sell, especially if we're going for the lower income families, will be sold to us in VEF, and you can't really use the VEF anywhere else in the world, and if you exchange it on the spot rate right now, it's like 19,000 instead of the 10 to 1, which is the official exchange rate. So I think the biggest problem is hedging with the VEF.
And if I can add to that, I think there's a lot of external factors out of our control once we're inside the country, specifically with the black market. Insofar as we can't curb that in any sense other than hoping that our awareness campaign has an effect. But once it's in the retailers, we cannot do anything from a public policy standpoint to ensure that there isn't price gouging and people aren't buying up all the supply and getting back to the same problem. So that would be the biggest fear along with hyperinflation.
Why would Goldman Sachs or any other bank want to deal with the Venezuela project?
Goldman Sachs has a history of going into emerging markets like this with higher, because their interest rate is 24% on something like this, they might want to go into something like this. Historically, they went into Puerto Rico and Mexico with the toll roads and Malaysia with a 1MDB crisis. So they have history of going into something like this, as well as back in the 60s, Goldman Sachs was one of the major players in the Singapore Economy, so they go into emerging markets like this, and if they see a huge return, 24% interest rate on the bond, then we might be able to convince them to go in.
What level of political risk would you say this project has?
I would say pretty high, but less because we're not producing inside the country. You might be able to touch on this more.
Yep. So the country level risk is at a level E, which is, it usually works as bond rating, so A to E, so it is at the highest level of risk, and I believe it's 189th of 191 of ease of doing business in this country. And so the political risk is extremely high, and the government's extremely volatile. So, I mean, it's unstable.
Where would you establish this corporation to do this?
Well, Maxina is incorporated in California, and as we mentioned in the entity slide, we're not creating a new entity to do this just through Maxinet's channels. We're just changing the entity structure to add that additional identification of being a benefit corporation. So it would still remain in Maxinet's control. There's no additional entity.
Have you seen any examples of anybody doing any kind of foreign exchange with a currency that suffers from hyperinflation and frankly is not tradable?
Yes, we've struggled a little bit looking into that. We found a lot of struggles with private people trying to do contracts like this, but we have found examples in the last couple of months of people of institutional level, super large level forward exchange contracts in the Forex market.
And this goes back to our hedge additionally, because it's so difficult to get VEF out of the country. That's why we're looking into other commodities and different industries to help diversify and mitigate that risk.
How realistic do you think it is to combine entities like the Gates Foundation with Goldman Sachs, political debt rate, government aid, private enterprise? This is a lot of components that are all aiming
There's
in different
definitely a
directions.
lot of components, but I think it's definitely possible because the Goldman Sachs it's on the debt side of things. Yes, they might not look good names next to each other, but because we're giving Gates the opportunity to go in and support these people that need help, one of their main things in the recent documentary is sanitation is the solution, and I think this goes right into that. So I think they would be encouraged to go into this, and Goldman Sachs would be encouraged from the other side of things to go into this. Name-wise, they might not love it, but both see the opportunities.
How are we doing on time? Is it EcoNati or EcoNati?
EcoNati. EcoNati.
How does EcoNati define biodegradable?
Well, biodegradable in the sense that they're not disposable diapers insofar as they're just going to go sit in a landfill. So, you know, they decompose over a course of X amount of years. We're not scientists on this panel, but the key point here is making sure that there's a sustainable alternative, and we're not just crowding landfills and actually contributing. We're helping to contribute to solving the problem in the country.
It sounds like those are expensive. Do they themselves accept donations and then discount that expensive diaper on the market?
I'm not sure about that, but we did go through the margins of their business and then additional 8% onto ours. So they sell to consumers at a price of 40 cents per diaper, and then we would buy that at a wholesale rate of 30% off, which is about general for wholesale discounts in diaper industries. Trying to pull it up.
The margins.
Whatever. So then their cost of manufacturing, they make 8% per diaper, so we made it so they they produce at about 26 cents per diaper, and then additional 8% onto that would be their margin, which is 28 cents per diaper, and then we make an additional 8% on that, which is 30 cents per diaper, and this is about the average for a higher quality diaper in Venezuela that's selling according to the case that they gave us.
Any adult diapers in there?
One more time?
Are there any adult diapers in your model?
We did not didn't include them.
Yeah, we're looking primarily at the 0 to 3 age target market here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Risky Business.